So yeah, we've run into each other a couple times at cons in the past. But the last time that I spoke to you, I don't know if you remember this. We actually talked about magic cards. In the airport.
Well, that is the best place to talk about magic cards. I think they did a survey, and
yeah, I think
airports.
that's recorded. Yeah, funnily enough. So I had known that you were very enthusiastic about collecting magic cards, but I didn't know to quite the extent. Because you've been, as you were telling me, you've been doing it since like almost the very beginning, right?
Yeah, pretty close. When it was about 94 when I started, and at that point you could still pick up, let's say, the Black Lotus for like $70, $60.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. The first one I bought was $100 when I picked one up, and that was crazy. I was like, what am I doing?
Right. And it's how much now?
Oh, it depends which one you have, but they seem to go for like $30,000, $40,000 if you have a really nice, like unlimited, and if you've got an alpha or beta, they're crazy. An alpha one sold like mint though, graded and mint, like a 10, sold for I think $500,000.
Holy shit! Okay.
Last year, if I remember correcly. Well, yeah,
wow.
that's what I said. And the funny thing is, I literally was on eBay, because I'm always collecting, I'm always, looking around on there. And I actually saw it, and I saw that it had like 5 minutes left. So I watched it, and I wasn't watching it before. I wasn't interested in buying. That's far beyond my means. So, but I actually watched it just go boop, bloop, 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 and go crazy. It blew my mind. I've never watched anything like that on eBay.
And when you were watching it, how high did it go up at that in that time period?
Oh, I think it was like maybe under $100,000 to start. So I watched it, and that's why I was looking, because it was already high enough to get my interest. Like, whoa, this has like 5 more minutes. Oh my God, that's going, wow. And that's an alpha. I own an unlimited, like a really nice, like a 9.5, I think graded. But I still was, it was interesting because I was like, whoa, I've never heard of it going for it. And then I just watched it keep going like it was some kind of a joke, but it was legit.
That's crazy. Like, so I'm not a Magic expert by any means. I've only played like a couple times in my life. It's always been kind of like adjacent to like other hobbies of mine. But in terms of the sort of why it's stuck around, do you think it's mainly just the game itself, or the collecting, or both? And what is it for you? Like, because I know you do play, but what has kept you like with? So I guess first off, why do you think it's had the longevity that it's had?
Yeah, that's interesting because it really has stood the test of time. So Magic the Gathering is the first, to my knowledge, of the collectible card games. Now, maybe there's some offshoot, but this is the first one that I know of, and definitely the first one to be that huge.
Sure.
And there were many to follow. It's a good game. I think one of the things that kept it going is probably the value of the early cards. They put out a list of cards decades ago that they would never reprint, and that was already when the cards were starting to soar in price. Nowhere like where they are now, but there were $300 cards, $500 cards, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so they put out a reserve list that said, hey, you know what? We promise you guys we'll never reprint. And it was a pretty long list, And I think that's a part of it, because it made people feel safe to pay higher prices for some of those cards.
Yeah.
Knowing they'd never really be reprinted, or at least that's, if we can trust their reserve list promise. It's also a really fun game to play. They haven't been afraid to make changes over the years and to add to it. So whatever the base model of the game was, they've added lots of abilities. There are other card games where cards flip over and, do other things. And Magic's incorporated all that over the years. So, they have certain two-sided cards now. And that was never part of the game in the beginning. But
then, like in recent years, it's just gone great. All collectible cards have skyrocketed.
Pokemon cards have gone crazy too. I mean, I always watch that with interest because it's amazing to see the prices of these things go up. Now, obviously, there's going to be, in my opinion, there's going to be a crash at some point.
Sure.
Because it's just been up with without much change.
Yeah.
But so I don't have any faith in newer cards. That doesn't mean I don't play them, I don't get them, I don't like them, I don't enjoy them. I shouldn't say no. I have less faith.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you're talking about the original cards that are on the reserve list, like the Black Lotus and the Power 9, which are the 9 most powerful cards from the original set that are never going to be reprinted. I mean, those are literally like the most popular, most well-known, most infamous, first ever collectible card game cards. So I have a lot of faith in those. It's like you, I know you're into board games. So it's like if you own the first board game ever created, like I have it. This is the first one. It was made in Rome in whatever year, and I own it. Right. Like that's always going to retain a certain amount of value not because people love to play it. They could get some other version of the game, clearly, but because it's just something you want to put in the Smithsonian,
Yeah. Have you played any of Richard Garfield's other games he's designed besides Magic?
I don't think so, but it would depend. What are some of the other ones I haven't played many other games. I tried a couple of the Marvel. I think they had a Marvel Versus. And I played that when that came out. I tried a few other quick ones. A lot of them seem cool. It's just I've put so much time into Magic at this point that I'm like, I don't even want to invest, because if I like it, then I'm going to start buying some. And I'm like, what do I do then? Magic's already like, to keep up with the expansions. It's a good chunk of change.
That's true. A lot of his other games are more just standalone stuff, though. Like, have you heard of King of Tokyo? That's a very popular one.
Ooh, I don't think I've heard of it.
King of Tokyo is very simple. You got your kaiju, you're fighting each other, and you're rolling dice. It's kind of like imagine Yahtzee, but you're using the dice to beat each other up and play cards and that kind of thing. It's
actually sounds
very
cool.
popular little card like game that has had like expansions and like re-releases, and that's a pretty popular one especially in the more casual game sphere.
And when did that come out? Is that in the last 5-10 years? Or
that would have been about 10 years ago, I think.
Okay.
So King of Tokyo had a sequel, King of New York.
Sure.
Bunny Kingdom is like one that I own. It's a fun drafting game where you're putting these little bunny things on this big grid and you're using cards to manipulate them. So the guy has quite an extensive. I mean, Keyforge is a newer, maybe in the last 5 years, card game that he made that every single deck that you buy is completely unique because it's randomly generated decks. It's a very interesting concept where every deck you buy is one of a kind, but there's no guarantee that it'll be any good. And so there are apparently over 104 quadrillion possibilities. And so I guess I don't know how a couple of years ago it was a pretty big thing. Now I'm not sure if it's kept its staying power, but people were buying boosters and comparing them and putting doing tournaments and stuff. So
is that one where you're supposed to play with the deck as is? I mean,
yes.
You're not supposed to alter it and take a card from one deck and throw it in another deck, for example.
Nope. I believe the whole conceit is you play with what you're given and see how it goes and try to do the best with the deck you've given, which I kind of like that concept. Like, I think in Magic and some of the other card games, there are versions where it's like, okay, you get like a random set and this is what you have to, deal with, like, and try to do the best you can. I do kind of like that.
I mean, that's fun too. I mean, because there's two elements I like about, well, I mean, there's lots of different ways to play Magic, but, I haven't played competitively in, forever, so that's just not something I can keep up with or choose to keep up with. It takes, I mean, you really got to know your stuff to preview the new set, decide which cards are going to be hot, what's going to go well with what, be ready for it, get all those cards, put your deck together. And then, of course, you have to be an incredible player and know all the other types of decks that are currently popular, so you know what you're up against. And, I see that card, I'm going to be ready. They're playing this kind. I can't, that I can't keep up with, or I choose not to.
Sure.
I play just like casual play. There's a style of play called Commander, and I also play something that's just, I just call it a random box. A lot of people call it a cube. But I actually came up with this style of play pre-cube, before people had the term and knew what a cube was. And that's basically where you most people will throw a bunch of really great cards into a random box. And then you'll kind of draw out of there, like everybody gets X amount of cards and you build a deck out of that. Which is cool because there's a randomness to it and you got to deal with what you get. Now, for me, my buddy Charlie and I, who have been playing forever, we were kind of looking at old cards, and what happens is you'll have a card, let's say a creature, for example,
Sure.
and eventually that creature will be bettered by something else, meaning this creature is just cost 2 for a 2/2 creature. There's nothing, it doesn't do anything special.
Yeah.
Well, eventually they come out with a 2/2 creature for the exact same cost, but it also does something, which kind of negates that earlier creature. So there's actually no reason ever really to play that creature in a lot of cases. And that goes for a lot of cards because there's so many thousands of cards now in existence. So we were like, well, how can we come up with a way to play like that would utilize all these extra cards that we have now that we're never going to put in a deck because they're not cutting edge cards anymore.
Sure.
So I actually have I think it's, the long boxes for those cards. I think it's 29 boxes I have.
Wow.
And it's really almost every card that has ever come out for Magic.
Really? You have represented what are the ones you're missing?
Well, I'll tell you in a sec because there's a reason the ones I'm missing that I'm missing. But
yeah.
So I play one of every card, and then if it's destruction, if it destroys creatures, it destroys other cards. Let's say, not get too into it. I put 4 in. Okay, so if it's a counter spell or something that destroys things, I put in 4, and that balances it quite a bit. And then the way we play, instead of having to make a deck, I wanted people to be able to come over and just let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
So literally, I will deal out 15 cards to everybody, whoever's playing. Out of that 15, they choose 5 to keep, just to give them a little head, a little. Let me design it a little bit so I don't get a handful of shitty cards. And then we have our lands separate, so we don't even make the lands part of the. I drew a land when I don't want one, and you can draw a land anytime you want, as opposed to on your draw. You want a land, draw out of the basic lands. And the randomness is really fun because every card's represented in there. So if you get a card and it's a classic card or whatever, you literally got the only one out of 30,000 plus cards.
Ah, okay.
And if you get a combo, 2 cards that work well together, it's just more amazing. And it does happen because you clearly didn't plan it. You didn't set your deck up that way. It's just oh my God, you got those 2 cards together. Unbelievable. So the only cards that aren't in there are the cards that inherently don't work in that style. So there are cards that, for instance, I would search your library and remove cards from your library to hinder your deck, right? To handicap your deck.
Okay.
Well, that doesn't work in this because the library is 30,000 cards.
Right.
So it would be irrelevant if I take 3 cards out of there. It wouldn't do anything. So those kinds of cards are not in there, and that's a small percentage of Magic cards. Everything else is in there.
That's cool. Yeah, that sort of idea of giving them the 5 and passing it. I mean, that's why drafting card games are fun if you are familiar with that. And,
absolutely.
I mean, the deck builder where you're building from scratch. I mean, yeah, I love the because I have a game called Marvel Legendary, which is a deck building game.
Okay.
And I have every expansion. I think there are
nice
20 plus expansions. I have them all in 3, 4, 5 giant boxes. And I have an app that randomizes it so that every time you play the game, it's 5 different characters and these villains or whatever, and they just combine, and it's always a different thing every time.
Yeah.
And the fun of it is, seeing, I've never played with this combination of cards before, but what can, and you just see but if I played this, Spider-Man with so-and-so, Iron Man in this case, this is a weird combo, but actually it works really well. I love discovering the links that you never would have, thought of if you were just, choosing very carefully. I like that randomness, like what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree. You have to look over so many cards if you're making a deck because obviously you're choosing the best out of everything.
Sure.
And if I need a couple of cards, I'm going to go on eBay or go to Frank & Sons, a local, trade show and pick them up for a deck. But, and I do that also, but it is nice to have that randomness. And with that, my cube, if you will, you can do drafts out of it. You can do any of those styles of random like you're talking about. I can just give everybody 100 cards and say, make a 60 card deck out of it.
Sure.
So we can do it any way that whatever we feel like doing. But I like the idea of boom, here we go. Boom, it's set up. Here, let me deal out 15 cards to everybody. And then we spend about 5 to 10 minutes choosing our cards and getting our lands. And then it's okay, roll, who's first? And I like that. You don't have to own any cards. You can come over and just play.
Nice. Now, I guess besides Magic,
yes,
what are some, hobbies or interests of yours that most people maybe wouldn't know about right away? What are some of your hobbies and interests that maybe most define you?
I'm laughing because I'm such I'm such a collector at heart. Like at this
Sure.
point in my life and stuff, my career keeps me fairly busy. Being a dad keeps me fairly busy. So a lot of my hobbies now, when I'm not, like I love like the Marvel films. I love going to see those films, and the family's into that stuff, and just doing things with the family. But I used to scuba dive. Like I haven't done that in forever. But I do. I'm a collector at heart. So the other thing I do is I collect vinyl. I collect vinyl records.
Oh, okay.
And I'm,
Gotcha.
I'm super into that. So I mean that I'd have to say that does define me to some degree.
How many do you have ish, if you know the count?
Well, I think somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 records. I think I've got. But I have a very specific. Like a lot of people are like DJs, and they have a huge, extensive record collection. I am more of a I collect like in really as pristine condition as I can get. And I'm a big Prince fan. So my whole collection is all Prince or Prince related, meaning songs written by Prince. So, there's a Kenny Rogers song that Prince wrote. So I have that Kenny Rogers album, I have a couple versions of it. Cyndi Lauper did a song by Prince. Stevie Nicks did a song by Prince. You know what I mean? So Celine Dion did a song by Prince. Obviously, Sinead O'Connor, the Bangles. So all those are included in there. And then the obvious, like The Time and Sheila E. and Vanity Six and some offshoot groups of his, like Madhouse and The Family and all his stuff. So that's a fun thing for me to collect. But I'll never get it all. That's the thing. Magic, you can get most of it, but records, it's one of those collections you have to resign yourself to. Like, you know what? I'm never going to get all of this because it's just, there's too much out there.
I mean, even if you're just confining it to Prince-related things alone, it's still impossible, you think?
It is, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people think, well, what does he have? He's got 40 albums or whatever, and so there would be those 40 albums,
Sure.
and then all the singles that came out,
Sure.
and then all the the 12 inches and the 7 inches. Then it would also be all the promotional records that came out, 12-inch and 7-inch and LPs. So the ones that were just made only for radio DJs, that kind of thing. And then that's just America. So then it would be all the same stuff from Canada.
Oh, wow.
All the same stuff from the Philippines, all the same stuff from Japan, all the same stuff from France, Italy, Germany, the UK in general, Ireland, South Africa. Like, it's like, there's no way. You can never have it all. So you
count every possible version, every language, everything.
Yeah, well, the language, I mean, it's not that the language changes, but it would be from a different, released in a different country.
Sure.
There may be a different language on the cover. Obviously, if you buy a Japanese record, there's going to be a Japanese, writing, obviously, all over the record. But the music will be the same, generally speaking. Right. But there may be an exclusive promotional item that was only released in Japan. And they made 500 copies of it in 1984. So it's procuring a copy of that's in decent condition and throwing that into your collection.
Do you have a most prized one? Well, what's the most prized possession in that collection?
Yeah, there's a few.
Or a favorite.
Yeah, I guess I have to go with the favorite. There's not. I don't have. I mean, there's a couple that I'm like really would love to get. But, one of the things I got actually fairly recently, which is pretty cool, was for his song Little Red Corvette. I got for the U.S. promo, I got what's called an acetate. And when they're pressing vinyl, they will first press something called an acetate, which to simplify it, they basically use to make other records. On occasion, they may, if they're in a rush, they may rush it out to a DJ or something so that they can play it that day. Now, an acetate only has so many plays on it. It's not designed to play over and over, and it's one-sided. The other side doesn't play. That's just the way that it's made. So to make two sides of a record, you need, two acetates. But so I picked up an acetate for that. So it's for one specific album. There's probably, I can't imagine there's more than 100 of them, if I'm being generous, floating around out there in the world. And it's not really something you put on your list to, like, I'm going to get all of these acetates, because you won't. If you get one, you're lucky and you go, cool, look at this, like all those records I have, I've probably got like 5 acetates.
Sure.
They're just not something you just go to the store and go like, yeah, give me 3 of your newest acetates.
Right, yeah.
You've got to be pretty lucky, and you got to be willing to sometimes spend the money if you're not, if you run into them, because you won't see them again. That's the thing. Or you're unlikely to. It's not like you go, oh, that looks cool, but it's $50 too high for me. I'll wait till another one comes around. It's like, well, another one might, but not of that same thing. Like that's probably not going to come around again. So
if you're able, you got to snatch it up when you can.
If you want it, yeah, you can of course say no.
Yeah.
But it's not the kind of thing that you go like, I'll wait. you just got to go. That's on the wall.
Another one. I'll get it later. Yeah, no.
Right. Somebody get this off the wall for me because I need to get this right now. This is mine. It's for me. No one else. Yeah, totally.
Gotcha. So, because it's interesting because I collect stuff as well, but like not to that extent. A lot of my collecting is based around wanting to like for board games specifically, like play as many new ones as I can. That's always my hunt.
I love that.
I recently passed the 1,000 mark in terms of board games played.
Woo!
Which it took a while, but I finally did it, and I'm shooting for 2,000 now. But
okay, so you've passed playing 1,000 board games. Is this a specific 1,000 or just 1,000 in general?
1,000 in general. One of the goals is the top 100 on Board Game Geek, which is like the ultimate website for board game ranking. Like
that's cool.
Playing the top 100 is a goal, but and I still haven't gotten to that yet because some of those games are legacy games, which take like weeks to play. You got to play them like
leave it on the table
10 times, 12 times to fully. And so I'm working on that this year. I'm planning to get through a bunch of those. I finished one called Clank Legacy, which is a very good deck building one. It was a great game, played, I think, 10 different sessions, and finally did that, checked that off the list. And I'm hoping to crack through more this year as well.
That's awesome. I got a question for you. So
yeah.
On your 1,000 plus, your list, your master list, what is the, to what level of, I don't know if this is the right simplicity, I want to say shittiness, but I mean, to what level down do you count? Like do you count? I mean, Chutes and Ladders is definitely a board game. Is that one of your? That. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Is there one that doesn't quite make it? Like, is there a point where like, no, Don't Break the Ice is not really a board game, like, or it is? Do you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I think all kids games count. I don't play a lot of kids games anymore, but I did count. Course, yeah. I try to remember back to all the kids games I grew up with as a kid, and I counted all those as well. I cataloged all of them in the website because all these are on Board Game Geek. So like, you got your Monopolies and all that stuff, and yes, I counted all that.
Oh, cool.
And even a lot of like card games, like even like public domain card games will still count on there.
Okay.
So I would say the only stuff that doesn't count, quote unquote, is maybe when it becomes more like miniatures games, like your Warhammer or
all right,
things like
fair
that.
Enough.
Like I think that
HeroClix is not a board game for you.
HeroClix might actually. Let me check. Is it on the website? Like
I don't know.
Those might be.
I mean, it is a miniature game, so I mean, it's not.
Oh wait, no. So I'm sorry. Miniatures games count, but not all of. It really depends on how it is, because some of them also veered more towards tabletop, and like anything that's like straight up like just Dungeons and Dragons or straight from a book. I don't think that counts.
Right, I got you.
That's more in the tabletop realm. So it really depends on where it falls. Like if it has dice and other things, and then it is a board game.
Nice.
But if it is more of a, let's say, D&D type experience, there are D&D board games, but I wouldn't call D&D itself a board game. There has to be some level of there are components that you buy with the experience to do so. So
yeah, what board game I used to love back in the day was and I know you know it because you know everything, is Dark Tower.
You know what's very funny is I just played the remake of that like 2 days ago.
Oh, how is it? How's the remake of it?
Did you see that they did that?
I saw it. It somehow it knew, and of course on Instagram it popped up like Kickstarter. We're doing this. Yeah. Months ago. But I assume they would have I assume it would be better, to be honest, unless they were trying to change the game itself, because technology has only advanced at this point.
Right. It was quite fun. A friend of mine brought it over. The actual tower itself is very impressive. It rotates, it lights up, it makes sound effects, and it's all controlled by an app now.
Oh wow!
And the app runs all the quests for you. So it'll like you drop a skull in the tower, and it'll like light up and do a sound, and the quest appears on the phone, and it shows you what happens, and you just do everything that way.
Oh shit! I think they sold one. I think you just sold one for them.
I think you would if you like the original game. I think you'll really get it because they got some very good designers as well. Because this is let me just double check the creators of this. I'm pretty sure it's Restoration Games. If you are familiar with that company, Restoration Games. Their whole gimmick is they take old games, classic games people love. From like 80s, 90s, and they remake them with better rules, better art, and just re-release them.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
So, and they do great. Like I know a very popular one from a while back was Fireball Island, if you know what that one is.
I don't think I know Fireball Island.
Fireball Island is a very silly, it's from the 80s. It's a game where it has this magnificent giant board, and these like red lava marbles that shoot out of this little toy cave, and if it hits your little piece, you fall over and things like that. Like it's a very silly kids game.
Yeah.
But the presentation of it is pretty great. Like even back in the 80s, and so they took that game, made a nice, impressive like big board out of it, and they updated the rules so that it's up to quote unquote current board game player standards. It's not just just give it some cards and improve it a bit, and then it's actually like a pretty fun game.
I love that. I love that.
Return to Dark Tower. We lost at the very last second to the final boss, but I did enjoy it quite a bit. I thought the presentation was great. I think, if you like that game, you should grab a copy. I think you'll get a big kick out of it.
I think I will. I think I'm going to splurge and go for it. Now, do you have a holy grail of board games that you don't have yet, or that you do have, either one?
Interesting. Like in terms of what I like I can't get it and I want it, or one I want to play.
Well, it could be either one. I'm curious about like if there's a physical game that you don't own, maybe because it's I don't know if you would pick up a classic board game because it's classic, or you just want the newest representation of that game.
For me, it's more important just being able to play it. So if I can play an updated version, I don't need to play the original quote unquote like version. Like that's not my collecting style in terms of like, I gotta have the But I say that, but if Board Game Geek is separate, because sometimes it classifies the two versions as different games. So then I have to play them both to count it. Like on the top 100, there's a game called Twilight Imperium. I don't know if you've heard of this game.
No. Well, now I have.
Massive space empire game. It's had 4 editions.
Wow.
In its life, the first one came out. Oh, when did it come out? Like late 90s. So it's been around for a bit. And it has 3rd edition and 4th edition in the top 100. And for me, I have to play both versions for it to count. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
Otherwise, you can't mark off Twilight Imperium.
Nope. I can cross off the edition I played, but if I don't play both, it doesn't count. And I've done that. I've played like different versions of games. That's what's nice about some like board game lounges or cafes. You can find older copies of stuff and play it that way. Because problem with board games is a lot of stuff gets out of print. Which
and probably some of it should be.
Not to a prohibitively expensive thing, but enough where I'm like, do I want to play this game like that bad, or can I like find someone who plays? Because for me, it's more important to just play it than to necessarily own it. But then again, I've definitely bought stuff just because fuck it, I need to play it, and I don't care how much it costs. I'll just get it. But luckily with games, it's not like a crazy, prohibitively expensive hobby.
No, I would think not for most of the ones.
Games.
Most of the hot games, like if it's popular and people still want to play it, like you said, they're going to reissue it. And then you can go to a swap meet if you want to play like Nancy Drew's, whatever, or the Duran Duran board game. You might find those there, and then you're going to have to throw down $5 if you even care to play it. They're clearly not on the top 100 list.
For me, I love any game I will play once. I love.
Oh, I love this. I love that. That's so great.
I was talking about this not that like pretty recently. Like someone was asking me about it. Like, oh, like what happens if you play like a bad game? For me, it's like well, I played it, and it's like this and food. I will try any food once, right?
Yeah,
even
that makes
if
sense.
I think it thinks it looks disgusting. And I'm not a picky guy at all. Like I will try literally anything. And so if I like it, great. And if I don't like it, I think it's a funny story or experience to share later on. Like, oh, like I've had that. So with board games, it's the same thing. I've played some real fucking stinkers, but one, it makes you appreciate better games.
Yeah.
And if someone asks about it, I'm like, yeah, I played that one. Yeah, it sucks. Like I can authoritatively.
Yeah.
That's the way I'm all about with my hobbies. Is I want to like. Not in a snobby way, but I like being knowledgeable and on top of like, oh yeah, like I want to experience as much of it as possible, because then it's fun to talk to people about stuff. Like, oh yeah, I have played that. Oh, have you played this? Oh yeah, that one's real bad, or this one's better. Or you should try this one. I just get that's when I know I've really fallen in love with a hobby of mine, is if I get to that point of like. What else can I play? What else can I consume?
Yeah, no, that's great. I can really appreciate that. That's very cool. I usually get I find a lot of board games just very daunting to start. I mean, not just the average ones, but you know what I mean. I mean, obviously some are very complex. You've got to really sit down and read the instructions, and then sometimes the setup, especially the first time, you're like, oh, this is one of those. Like this is serious. I got to spend 40 minutes setting up this board, make sure I figure everything out, and of course, if it's new, you got to. Everything's got to be taken out just right, and you got to rip the little pieces out of the cardboard. But I love that. I can see that's so great, though. I love that you're so into those, and you must have a very extensive collection.
Yeah, right now I'm trying to keep it to a clean around 200 ish. Like I don't want to get to a point where I'm just keeping stuff just to keep. Like I do want to have a collection of like. These are the 200, and all of them are ones I want to play. Like I'm going to play again.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I give away a lot of games very frequently. Just like, hey, anybody want games? And I just send them over. One, that it helps get rid of the clutter, and two, hey, my friend has it now. So if I want to play it again, I can go, hey, just bring it over.
Yeah. And you basically you want to have like a really nice game library of like all. What do you want to play? These are all excellent games, as opposed to like, check it out. I've got 2,000. Board games, here's the Scooby-Doo game, and here's, these that we're never going to play, they're just a thing. Like, did you know they made this game? So that makes sense.
That I can respect. I like seeing people's, because I love collecting too, and I love seeing people's collections. I just don't have the space, but also, well, it's mainly just I don't have the space. Like, board games are so fucking big. Like, there's no, like, I would have to get like a separate storage unit to justify that. Like, I do admire collections like that, but I just can't do it.
Right.
And also, I'm too busy playing the new stuff. I'm sure at some point I'll get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've played everything that I've wanted to play, and I can just keep up with the new stuff, and then maybe I can, relax a bit and build up the collection a little bit more. But as it is right now, I just play too many new stuff that I can't justify keeping too many games around.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But I'm like you. I can appreciate really any collection. If you're passionate about it, I mean, it doesn't take much on a lot. Like a board game, I would look at it immediately and be like, whoa, okay, what's this? Tell me, I would be into it.
Yeah.
Because I can always appreciate. But even if it was something, like I don't care about bottle caps, for example. You know what I mean? Like that's not something on its own. But if you had a great bottle cap collection and you were willing to share with me like why these are rare and what makes them rare and how they're graded, and I don't know that stuff, and I would be totally fascinated by it. I wouldn't probably take up that hobby, but I would be like, no way, that's super cool. I thank you for sharing that with me, and I could appreciate your really rare items for the reasons you told me they were rare.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I love learning about that stuff. Like if I encountered someone who had a sort of a bottle cap collection, I'd just be like, okay, well, like, what are the what are the rare ones, or what for you makes like your favorite, like what are your favorite kinds? Like I like any kind of hobby that like you said, I'm not going to take up bottle cap collecting, but I like learning about it. I like hearing about it. I want to know these things, like, and then sometimes it's very handy. Like you've kind of reminded me, like I have a friend who's like really knowledgeable about soda.
Okay.
So have you heard of Galco's?
No.
Galco's is it's a soda pop shop in LA.
All right.
It's like Highland Park, and basically it's a huge store filled with every kind of soda from all kinds of countries you can imagine.
Okay.
And so he recommended it to me, and I went there, and it was awesome. Like I bought a bunch of soda just because I was like, what is this? Like these strange flavors, or ones that from like
it's pretty big.
like,
I'm looking at it online right now. It's like a supermarket, but it's all soda.
Yeah, it's 700 different sodas.
Wow.
Like all different countries. Old style sodas that you would never find in a regular grocery store.
Right.
I'd say it's worth going to at least once just to look around, get a couple sodas. I mean, I bought like a whole box, but
yeah.
And so I texted him and I was like, just tell me what are like the must try sodas. Like
that is cool. Yeah. I think I
always
will check it out.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And it's styled in this like a classic 50s Italian grocery store. Like it's very cute. So
yeah, that's cool. I don't drink a ton of soda anymore, but that actually works in this place's advantage, because if I'm going to, it'd be kind of cool just to have, like, I wouldn't want to buy a bunch of, do they sell them like solo? Do you have to get a 6-pack?
You can buy, you can just buy one bottle each. Yeah,
because I'd probably pick out like 25 or whatever my faves and just get one of each of those. So that, I'm not big on wine. Just like someone would have a wine cellar, I would throw a bunch of, 30 different sodas that I just want to try once into my fridge outside. And then every time I was like, I want a soda, I'd be like, oh, this is fun. Because I get to go, let's see, what do we want to do? Ooh, this one from the Philippines looks cool. Let's try that.
It was a very fun few weeks after that, yeah, because like I would just be like, I'll try. I don't know what this is, but I'm gonna try it. Like, yeah, it was very. I love that shit.
Awesome.
Now, I like to give the guests an opportunity. If you'd like, is there a question for me you'd like to ask, or a topic you'd like to bring up?
Is there? Oh, I don't know that I even thought about a topic, like something I want to talk about right now. But
a question or anything.
My question is, well, from what I knew about you, because we had talked about the board game, so that was really that holy grail thing. But it sounds like it's not that type of collection, so that makes sense that there wouldn't. Like you could get whatever game you wanted in some capacity. It's not that hard to get.
Right.
I mean, I think that was my main thing, and we kind of talked about what some of the good games. I actually you had suggested a game for me. We just haven't had a chance to get to it yet. It was a good 4-player. I'm trying to remember, something Islands or something.
Forbidden Island.
That's it, Forbidden Island. So it's still sealed. We have it. I actually rearranged all my board games when we got it, and we just haven't had a chance to sit down with the family, because that was the idea, is to play. To play, and then the kids also got a bunch of other little board games, and we were playing some of those.
Or what were some of the ones you played recently with them?
My youngest got, let's see what it's called. It's like Mickey and the Beanstalk or something like that. It's one of those games, it's a two-level game. You set up the beanstalk up high. That's really just for looks. It's not a very complicated game, but it is one of those games where up to 4 players play as a team against the giant. And you don't win every time, which is what I like about those kind of games. And we can all go, oh, we were so close. We'll play again later, and that's really makes it more satisfying when you do win.
Sure.
So it's not a difficult game to play, but sometimes it doesn't work out for you. Your spins are not so good, and you're like, oh, I guess we're not gonna make it this time. The giant wins, we lose.
Sure. How old are your kids?
They're 10 and 6. Gotcha. So the Forbidden Island, I think the youngest was older than 6, not that much. It was like maybe 8, but we haven't broken it out yet. So I'm going to break that out, and we'll try it and see. And if my 6-year-old is like, what is going on? Then we'll just play the rest of the family at some point, just to try it once.
I'm looking at this Mickey and the Me. Presentation wise, it's pretty great. Like I love how this looks.
No, it looks great. It doesn't take a lot of setup. You know, once you have it set up, you're like, I mean, I can put this together really quickly. No big deal. It's very easy. There is some strategy, but it's very simple. I mean, for someone who's a gamer like you. But I just mean it's not just do whatever. There is some strategy as to which direction you should go and where you should move to and what you should get first if you really are trying to not get caught by the giant. There's slight, but for a kid, it's decent strategy. I don't think that my kids figured it out. I usually go like, you want to land here because
right.
He can't get you next time. And no matter what happens, he can't get you next turn. So go there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these are the types of games that like, get people, the good memories from these types of games as children is what get people back into the hobby, I think, as adults. It's like, I want to kind of have that experience I had like playing games with the family as a kid and these cool looking games, and you can get that experience just on an adult scale now, which is nice.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I like. I'm a big fan of Monopoly Junior. not because it's an amazing game, but for everyone who's played Monopoly, and you know how the game goes on forever, and there's all this bargaining, and I'll trade you this, and I'll mortgage that, and I get more money, and I can pay you, and blah. And it just never ends. Oh my God, they've made Monopoly Junior like it is like a 15, 20-minute game. And I love that. And you could always extend the game because all you would do is give people more money to start.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So it's just like, but I love the idea that you can go, because with kids, it's basically Monopoly. So it's as fun as Monopoly is. It doesn't get as complicated. Like it's one of those things, everything you land on, you have to buy. So you're more likely to lose because you land on something and you can't afford it. There's no trading. There's no, you're like, done. I can't afford it. I'm out. Last person still in wins. Period. But I do like the idea that you're not in for like 5 hours and you're not screaming at your grandma at the end of it. Like, God damn it, grandma.
Right.
Please give me alone.
It's a pretty miserable experience if you're playing classic Monopoly. So I think a shorter version would be better. It's funny. I grew up with an old, I'm looking at it right now on Google Images, a 1991 junior travel game version of Monopoly Junior. I grew up with that. I used to play it in the car all the time.
Now, was that Monopoly Junior the same style as I'm talking about? Did they have it that far back?
Yeah. Monopoly Junior has been around for a while.
And it's always been that same thing where whatever you land on, you have to get. There's no trades.
Yeah, pretty much.
See, I never played that as a kid. I don't know if they had a Junior when I was a kid. I just went straight to the regular one, and that. Ugh.
Yeah, I had classic Monopoly too, but I don't know where I got it. But this little classic travel one, you could play just little pegs on a board that you could play with. And tiny little money.
Oh my God,
I played a lot of that.
That's great. Now, how about that? Is there a game that you played as a kid that you would want to have memory-wise, like you'd want, or that you do own? Not because it's a great game, not because it's one of the top 100, but like I used to play this with my family, and so I got a copy of it, and I have a decent looking, just as like a memory thing. Like there it is. That's the one that started it all, or whatever the case is.
I don't own it, but a game that would fit that bill is 13 Dead End Drive. Do you know what that is?
So I think I've seen the commercials. It sounds
yeah.
I don't know that I played it, but it sounds like I think I've seen that commercial.
The commercials are pretty memorable. They had very horrifying Muppet things that screamed as stuff killed them, basically. It's funny. I was just talking to Ray Chase because we both loved this game as a kid. It is you are in a mansion and you're moving these people around, and you're trying to kill other people off so that you get like the fortune or whatever. And I'll show you a picture in
I'm looking it up. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Oh, you're looking it up. Yeah. It has these traps. So if you put them like under the chandelier, you press a little thing and the chandelier falls and knocks them over. Or you put them on top of the stairs, they fall down the stairs like a suit of armor falls on them. They go on the bookshelf. The little lever knocks the ladder over. So it had this great toy value of it's so entertaining just watching the traps work. And the actual game itself was like, pretty fun for, what it was. Like, I loved that game.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It looks cool. I never played it because now that I'm seeing it, I definitely saw the commercial for it, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Because that's how I know it, because it's definitely not one of the ones that I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember playing that thing.
Sure.
That's great.
I have a question for you. So, besides Magic and the vinyl stuff, so
all that nerdy shit
outside the realm of collecting, I guess, is there something that you are like super knowledgeable or obsessed with on that sort of nerd scale of like, oh, and it can be like, you know, I have a friend who like remembers like every like toy commercial, right? I have a friend who, you know, like things like that. Is there something that like quote unquote useless information? Although to me it's not useless. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I store a lot of useless information. I love like old, jingles for just anything. They're almost all in my head. So like I can, sing like tab cola, what a beautiful drink. And I can sing like, Diet Pepsi. I can sing all these silly, ridiculous soda commercials and, all that stuff. And it's lame because I have such a hard time remembering things I want to remember. I mean, I struggle with that sometimes. I literally do. And I have what I generally consider to be, useless pop culture information. I love old, I was a big Saturday morning cartoon kid. Anything, I was probably watching, much later than my age would have deemed appropriate. But any of that stuff. So whether it was like old anime, like, Kimba, the White Lion, or Marine Boy, or Battle of the Planets, Speed Racer, like all that, Transor Z, like all those things. And then everything like the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon or Mighty Orbots, just like ridiculous stuff that most people don't remember, whether it's like the Rubik's Cube cartoon or the not Dungeons and Dragons, the Dragon's Lair cartoon, or just everything. I just watched all, it's 20 different versions of Scooby-Doo growing up, like, all that stuff. So that stuff's very fresh in my brain.
When you say you were watching way past what is quote unquote like age appropriate, like what's the latest cartoons you remember watching still like on TV?
Well, I still watch a lot of cartoons now, but I mean, I watched a lot of SpongeBob. I watch a lot, truthfully because of the kids now. The girls will watch stuff, and really to do voiceover, you should pay some attention to the trends of, what's going on. So I do some of that, and they help, which is good, especially as their tastes get, a little bit older. My 10-year-old just started really getting into anime on her own, separate from me, which is kind of cool. So she's gonna, eventually she'll turn me on to other shows. That I haven't even started watching yet, but that's really fun. But have
your kids seen anything you're in yet?
Yeah, they've seen a lot. It's funny, they have they don't have a realistic view of the percentage of entertainment that I'm involved in, because I always threw anything at them that I worked on. If they didn't like it, they didn't like it. I mean, then we didn't watch it, but they liked a good chunk of it. So it's funny because it's not going to be a good representation of reality, but as they grow up, they're going to be like, oh my God, my dad was in everything, because I threw that stuff at them. I was like, hey, check this out. Watch this one. Do you like this one? Hey, that's your daddy, so. So they're going to be like,
they
have
a favorite? Like out of the stuff you've been in, they're like, this slaps. This is great.
Man, they've gotten into a few different things. I'm trying to think. They both really liked Glitter Force when that came out on Netflix. They were big on that. My daughter, Lily, my older daughter, was into a show called Fresh Beat Band of Spies, which was the Fresh Beat Band. It was their cartoon. But the younger one was a little too young right then. I'm trying to think what else. Right now, I just started watching Hunter x Hunter with my 10-year-old, because she's already watching Demon Slayer and all this other anime. Not like super adult, but like, that she's gotten over the blood thing.
Sure.
Which is recent. Like we would watch like a Miyazaki film, and she loves Miyazaki films. But then, if there was a blood scene, and which wasn't terrible, but it was, enough for her to go, whoa, okay, I don't want to watch this. And now she's like, Dad, I know it's not real. Like it's fine. She doesn't want you to turn it off. It's fine. I can deal with it. And she means it. I would never force her to watch anything she was not ready to do. But she started watching that with me, and it's cool because I'm limiting that to, for now at least, with me, so I get the experience with her, because she has her own. She loves My Hero Academia. She does that on her own. So this one, but it's great because she'll be like, "Hey, Dad, can we watch some of Hunter x Hunter tomorrow?" And it's nice because I was like, let me get into this because I think it's important as your kids get into different things, if it's something you can get into with them and be part of that experience, because it gets harder and harder to continue bonding as they get older because they're going to be inclined to move away from you.
Right.
In a lot of ways. Like me and my friends, we do this. And so I'll give her some shows so she can have those. Yeah, that's your anime. You know it. That's all you. And she likes to be the expert on it, no more than me. But there's got to be a couple of shows that we're like, oh, yeah, we did that. She'll look back and be like, yeah, we watched that together. And she's liking that one, Hunter x Hunter, and that's one that I'm into. So,
had you watched Hunter x Hunter before this, or is this your first time as well?
I had seen it, which is good because it makes me a little nervous when we're putting on something brand new if it's kind of like TV mature or PG-13.
Yeah.
You know, because you never really know. And then you're like, oh, what's about to happen? Oh, God. So I've seen most of the Hunter. I think towards the end I fell off a little bit, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, and it's plenty of episodes. But right now I'm good. I'm comfy. I'm not really worried. There's a couple of suggestive. I think there's one episode that's got a little bit of sexuality that's suggested. And at her age, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to be uncomfortable. It's going to make me uncomfortable, her uncomfortable, or if it's going to go completely over her head. And she's just going to go, that guy's weird.
About?
He's weird.
Are you talking about one of your scenes?
One of my scenes, exactly. So it's going to be my voice.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, well, I'm worried about that. That's the only thing. We're not there yet, but I'm like...
Are you talking about the one during the tournament?
Yes. Yes. Okay. I'm like, so when we get to that, there's a good chance she'll just be like, he's weird. Like, why is he doing that? I don't get it, you know?
He's really excited about something, but whatever. I don't know.
Right. Because she's not going to get all the little innuendos that he makes throughout. I don't think she's going to understand that fighting is like sex to this character. I think she's just going to go, wow, he really likes fighting. But the true test will be that Heaven's Arena sequence. Because if she's like, whoa, Dad, then I know. Then I know. Maybe I'll just go make myself a coffee at that point. You keep watching, honey.
I'm going to take off for a bit. But keep watching. It's fine. I don't need to watch this part.
Absorb this on your own. I don't want to make it worse for you because I'm sitting next to you and you're going, Dad, what are you doing?
Now their general when they do hear you, like, what's their general reaction? Are they like, oh, that's cool, or do they not, like, what's their sort of normal reaction to when they hear you in something, or does that even register?
It does register with them. They can usually pick me out. I mean, most of the time they can pick me out, and they enjoy it. They like it. They both. It seems it's weird because at this point, you know, it's been all their life. All their lives I've been doing that. So, you know, I even, you know, they watched Sesame Street. I did a thing on Sesame Street. So, I mean, even when they were real little, they would be like, that's Daddy. So it registers well with them and they like it so far. I'm sure their teenagers be like, oh, God.
They're either going to go like, oh, God, or go the opposite, like, you know who my dad is?
That's where my 10-year-old is now. It was pretty funny. We went to a park and we were playing at this park and she made a friend and then she came over with her friend and, you know, was like, hey, do the Hawk Moth from Miraculous, do the voice. And then and her friend was like, my dad's on Grey's Anatomy. You know, it was just funny because they were both like, you know, doing that whole thing together.
Sure.
Yeah. So far it's worked out well. I have an older son, and when I was just starting, he was the one who was like not, you know, teenage, like, whatever, you know, I don't care, it's not important. Because everybody, like you said, they go either direction. So
sure.
I feel like I paid my dues, and right now with my daughters, they're still impressed with it. So I'll enjoy that for as long as that lasts. They don't need to be impressed. Hopefully they're not embarrassed. I'm enjoying that they're not like, ugh, whatever, you know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. I will say though, it's very cool though that you're in, like, you know, trying to participate and encourage, you know, their interests. Like, you know, a lot of parents wouldn't. I'd also not say wouldn't, but just you know, I mean, that's not something I could imagine. Like my parents, like, oh, we're gonna watch like this anime together. Like I think that actually would have been a very like cool experience. So it's actually very rad that you're taking the time to do that.
Thanks. Yeah, when I can, I will, because it's one of the things. You know, there are things that are just interests, and then there are things that children define themselves by. And she's
Sure.
currently like an anime girl. So she's wearing things, she's drawing drawings all over, she's putting stickers on her thermoses at school. So she's defining herself that way. And if you think about it, most of the things when you define yourself as you get older, you don't want your parents to have anything to do with, nor can they. Right? Like if you're like, oh, I'm very goth right now, you're not going to let your parents like start dressing goth and be like, oh, okay, cool, we're goth too. It's just not going to work.
Sure.
So if I see an opportunity for something that she's actually for a year or two going to define herself by, and I can somehow be a part of that, then I'm 100% in. I'm going to jump in if I can without her going, that's my space, Dad. And I will respect that when that happens.
That's very cool. And just a warning, if they're like me, it may never go away. I'm finding that more and more with my generation, later generations, and it's just like it's just become part of the mainstream now.
That's true. No, that's a good point. But that goes to my point, which makes it all the better to make that part of our bond that we could sit and watch. Because she's been, we watched Spirited Away when it came out together. You know what I mean? So I mean, she's been watching anime. She didn't love it as anime. She was like, oh, this is a great film. Like The Little Mermaid is a great film. Now it's all like, oh, anime. Okay, like I get it. I know what anime is now, and I like these specific ones, but it's all cool in general. So it was a natural progression, and it's an easy thing for me to clearly, because I work in it so much, to clear, and I love it. I grew up on it to participate with her with, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I guess a question for you then is, as someone who kind of grew up with it, do you have let's say like an all-time favorite? I'll ask that first. An all-time favorite anime?
Yeah, I do, and I think a lot of it has to do with. I mean, for me, my all-time is Robotech. And it has to do with how old I was at the time. I was just in high school, and I remember it was on, competed with Transformers and G.I. Joe. Those were both on around the same time. And it was very clear to me that, A, it was episodic, so it continued. It wasn't like, it did matter which episode in what order you watched, and that was not the normal in whatever it was, 82 or whatever. The norm was, it's just an episode. It doesn't, continue sequentially. It's not like, oh, now they're here, now they're this. So that was a big deal. And the characters dying was a huge deal for me. You lose main characters in Robotech, and we've all seen it a million times now. But at that time, if you watched a helicopter explode on G.I. Joe, you always saw one or two parachutes coming out of that. Yeah. And on Robotech, you'd see the helicopter explode and they'd zoom in, and in the flame, you'd see the skeletons reaching for like, help! And they, as they disintegrated. And I loved that as a kid. That didn't freak me out. I was like that. It raised the stakes.
Yeah.
It made me so much more into this. And then it's kind of a bit of a romance and a soap opera too, that show, amidst all the sci-fi and the really cool animation and the transforming, vehicles and stuff. So hook, line, and sinker for me was Robotech. I don't know that it's the best, but it's for me my favorite.
But for you, it's close to your heart. Yeah, I think that's also what resonated with a lot of a kids anime for a lot of people. Is like, for me, that would have been like Digimon back in the day. Things like you said, like characters dying for real and a real story that you paid attention to every week. That you wanted to know. You just got to know what happens next. I mean, that's the great part of it. And then I guess you said you keep up with it nowadays a bit as well.
A bit. I'm far behind the amount of shows I'd like to watch. I mean, even my own shows, which I try to watch because I feel like when I meet, fans of the show, I can connect better with them if I've also watched the show.
Familiar, yeah.
Well, because I don't remember a lot from it's very different to watch a series, for me at least, and connect with those characters as characters and understand the show, the music, like everything, how it flows together, and to go in and watch little bits that only you're in. Yeah. Voice those as best as you can, and then do another show, and then another show that day, and then the next day you do two other shows, and the next day, and You know what I mean? And then people ask you, "Do you remember that show?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it.
I remember the part I'm in, and not that well because that was like 3 years ago. Yeah.
3 years ago, when I did 6 shows that week.
Sure.
So I like to, but even with that, like, I haven't watched like Jujutsu Kaisen. I haven't seen, like, there's a bunch, and that's a very popular show, and I haven't really sat down and watched that. So I have a lot of catching up to do, but and like you were asking other favorites, like Death Note.
But do you seek stuff out
too.
when even if you're not in it, like just to watch?
Yeah, that one, like Death Note is one I was saying. Like I loved Death Note. That was one of my faves. I could watch. I could always sit down and watch Death Note over. I could always.
Nice.
I love that series. But most series I'll go through once. And I don't have to be in it. Like I said, I grew up on anime, and I haven't had the privilege of being in a Miyazaki film, and I try to watch all of those. And
yeah.
So
for you, it's something that it'll always, in some shape or form, whether it's working on it or watching with your kids or just watching on your own, it'll just be part of you in some way. Basically.
Yeah, if it's a good show, it's a good show. And the style, exactly. I fell in love with the style that is anime before I knew what it was when I was a kid, and I was in the 70s, literally, where I would have to tune these ancient TVs where you'd put it on this weird channel and tune it, and like, let me see if I can find something. There's fuzz. Wait, here's something. What is that? Oh my God, it's a cartoon. It's animated. I'm going to watch it. And a lot of that was anime that I would find, and I was out on the East Coast at that point, and I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was amazing, and it looked different than Scooby-Doo, and it felt different than Scooby-Doo, and I loved it. I absolutely adored it. But I did like Scooby-Doo too.
Yeah, and now you're working on it, so it's
I had no idea. I know, it's so funny. It wasn't even a dream of mine until it was, basically. Until I was pursuing it. It wasn't like a kind of a thing that I was like, oh, when I grow up. I had no clue.
Damn.
Whatsoever.
Well, this has been great. Thank you very much for taking the time, man. I love talking about nerdy shit with people, and I can always I like seeing, especially a fellow collector, a fellow obsessive. It's always nice hearing different people's perspectives.
Yeah. I hope this pandemic is pretty shitty, but because we're still fairly locked down and don't get out much. But I would love at some point, I'd love to hang out with you and play some of these great games, and I'd love to show you, if you ever want to play Magic. Whatever. Either way, it's not a one-sided street. Either one would entertain me equally.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you let me know whenever, and you are totally welcome. I will show you some good games.
That would be awesome.
Now, where can people find you?
You can find me on I'm on the social media. Twitter, I'm at SilverTalkie, Silver Talkie. Just I think Keith Silverstein, voice artist, on Instagram, and you can find me on. I'm rarely ever on TikTok because that's so addictive. I'm afraid to even open up TikTok now. When I open up TikTok, I lose like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
I don't know what that's
my wife.
Oh my God, that's me. I'm the same thing. Like I can open up Facebook or any of those other things and like just be like, I'm just going to see what's new. Okay, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, cool. I'm closing it up now. But TikTok, I'm like, what the? I don't even do the thing I went to TikTok to do.
Yeah, you just get sucked in.
Yeah, it's terrible. I'm going to be at what is the anime one? I'm going to a con.
This will probably come out a while later.
You're right. That doesn't matter. Let me just be ambiguous. I've got a con coming up real soon. Go ahead and check out my website. Just KeithSilverstein.com.
And go see what con is coming up when this comes out.
Yeah, my website will update everything. So if anybody wants to find me for Streamily signings or for Cameo videos or for what con I'm going to be at next, just go to KeithSilverstein.com, and it's all, there's links for everything there. So whatever's new, and I'll link you to all my social media too. So that's the truth. That's all I need to say now is KeithSilverstein.com, and that's it. Everything's right there.
All right. Well, thank you again, man. This has been a pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.